Welcome to SERA Mythology. I am glad you are here. Sit back, because today we begin a journey. Not just through stories, but through the oldest memories of the human race. The myths, the legends, the sacred tales that civilizations built their entire understanding of reality upon. These are not just old stories. These are the dreams and fears and deepest questions of our ancestors, dressed in the language of gods and monsters. And today, for our very first episode, I want to take you to ancient India. To a time before time, as the texts describe it. To a war between darkness and light so absolute, so total, that the universe itself had to bend to resolve it. This is the story of Hiranyakashipu, the demon king who declared himself God. And of his son Prahlada, a child who refused to stop believing. This is a story about power, about faith, about what happens when a father becomes the enemy of his own child, and about the nature of the divine, which, as you will see, does not always arrive in the form you expect. Let us begin. To understand Hiranyakashipu, you have to understand what he came from. In Hindu cosmology, the universe operates in vast cycles. Creation, preservation, destruction, and creation again. At the top of this cosmic order sits a trinity. Brahma, the creator. Vishnu, the preserver. And Shiva, the destroyer. Below them exist all forms of life, from humans to celestial beings to the Asuras, the anti-gods, beings of immense power and desire who exist in eternal tension with the divine order. Hiranyakashipu was the king of the Asuras. His name translates roughly to one who is fond of gold and soft cushions. Even in his name you can feel the personality. A being drunk on comfort, on luxury, on supremacy. He was ancient, powerful beyond measure, and entirely consumed by one desire above all others. He wanted to never die. Now this is a very human desire, is it not? The fear of death. The desperate wish to outlast our own fragility. Every civilization in history has grappled with this. The Egyptians built pyramids. The Chinese emperors drank mercury believing it would grant immortality. Hiranyakashipu went to the ultimate source. He went to Brahma himself. The way to earn a boon from Brahma, the creator, was through tapas. Extreme austerity. Extreme meditation. Extreme sacrifice of the body and comfort in pursuit of spiritual power. Hiranyakashipu performed tapas so severe, so unrelenting, that the heat from his meditation began to disturb the cosmos. The gods themselves were shaken. The celestial realms trembled. And Brahma appeared before him. And here is where the story becomes extraordinarily clever. Because Hiranyakashipu did not simply ask for immortality. He knew that Brahma could not grant true immortality. Even Brahma himself, the creator, exists within the cycle and eventually dissolves back into the infinite. So Hiranyakashipu asked for something more cunning. He asked for a death that was impossible. He said, "Grant me that I cannot be killed by man or animal. Grant me that I cannot be killed by any weapon. Grant me that I cannot be killed during the day or the night. Grant me that I cannot be killed inside a building or outside of it. Grant me that I cannot be killed on the earth or in the sky or in the water. Grant me that I cannot be killed by any being created by you." Brahma, bound by the laws of cosmic agreement that govern even gods, granted every single one of these boons. Hiranyakashipu rose from his austerities essentially invincible. And with this invincibility, he did what every powerful being who believes themselves beyond consequence eventually does. He became a tyrant. He conquered the three worlds, the mortal realm, the celestial realm, and the underworld. He dethroned the gods, drove them from their heavenly abodes, and declared that all worship, all prayer, all devotion was to be directed to him alone. Not to Vishnu, not to Brahma, not to Shiva, to him, to Hiranyakashipu. He was now God, and he would tolerate no competition. There was a personal reason for this hatred of Vishnu specifically. In a previous age, Vishnu had killed Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha, in the form of a cosmic boar called Virha. Grief had transformed into rage, and rage had transformed into obsession. Hiranyakashipu did not just want power. He wanted to destroy the very concept of Vishnu. He wanted devotion to Vishnu erased from the universe. He almost succeeded. The gods fled. The rituals stopped. The prayers were silenced. Across the three worlds, only one name was permitted to be spoken in worship, and it was his. And then his son was born. Prahlada came into the world under unusual circumstances. While Hiranyakashipu was away performing his tapas, the gods, sensing an opportunity, attacked the demon kingdom. The divine sage Narada intervened and took Hiranyakashipu's pregnant wife, Kayadu, to safety. And while she lived in Narada's hermitage, waiting for her husband to return, the sage spent his days telling her stories of Vishnu. The child in the womb heard everything. There is something almost unbearably poetic about this detail. Prahlada's devotion to Vishnu did not begin in a temple. It did not begin with a vision or a miracle. It began in the dark, unborn, listening to sacred stories. The foundation of his faith was laid before he even took his first breath. By the time Prahlada was born and old enough to speak, he was already, spiritually, completely formed. He spoke of Vishnu constantly. He sang hymns to Vishnu. He urged his playmates to abandon worldly pursuits and seek the divine. He was, by every account, not a normal child. His father was horrified. Imagine the rage of a man who has declared himself the supreme being of the universe, only to discover that his own son, his own flesh and blood, his heir, is a devoted worshipper of the one God he despises above all others. Hiranyakashipu tried reason first. He called his son before him and explained, patiently, that Vishnu was the enemy. That he, Hiranyakashipu, was the true power in the cosmos. That Prahlada needed to stop this foolishness and take his rightful place as prince. Prahlada smiled, bowed respectfully to his father, and said that Vishnu was present in all things, including in Hiranyakashipu himself, and that this devotion could not be abandoned. Hiranyakashipu tried education. He sent Prahlada to the finest teachers, scholars who taught statecraft, military strategy, the arts of power and governance. Everything a demon prince needed to rule. And for a while, things seemed to progress normally. But whenever Prahlada returned home and his father asked him what he had learned, the boy would speak only of devotion, of the soul, of the eternal nature of the divine. Then came the punishments. What follows in the ancient texts is a sequence of increasingly desperate and brutal attempts by a father to kill his own child. And I want you to sit with that for a moment, because underneath all the mythology, underneath the divine cosmic drama, this is also a very human tragedy. A parent so consumed by ideology, by ego, by the addiction to power, that he turns against the one thing that should be most sacred to him. His child. Hiranyakashipu had Prahlada thrown from the top of a mountain. The boy landed unharmed, Vishnu's presence protecting him. He had Prahlada trampled by war elephants. The elephants refused to harm him, or their tusks found no purchase against the child's body. He had poisonous snakes released upon Prahlada. The snakes lost their venom in his presence. He had Prahlada thrown into the ocean with heavy stones tied to him. The ocean itself rejected the command and the boy surfaced unharmed. He had sorcerers cast the most terrible curses upon the child. The curses dissolved. He had Prahlada starved. He had him burned. He had him subjected to extreme cold. Through every ordeal, the boy remained calm, serene, his lips moving in quiet prayer, completely untouched. And this drove Hiranyakashipu to the edge of madness. Because this is the thing about absolute power. It creates a very specific kind of fragility. The more absolute the power, the more intolerable any defiance becomes. Hiranyakashipu could command armies of demons. He could move celestial objects. He could silence the gods themselves. But he could not make his son stop loving Vishnu. And that impossibility was destroying him from the inside. There is a philosophical dimension here that the ancient Indian texts explore with tremendous sophistication. The demon king was not just failing to kill his son. He was failing to kill faith itself. And faith, the texts suggest, operates by entirely different laws than the laws of the physical world. You cannot imprison it, starve it, or strike it with a weapon. It lives in a place that no tyrant can reach. Now we come to the most famous moment in the entire story. Hiranyakashipu, trembling with frustration and fury, grabbed his son and demanded to know, once and for all, where is your Vishnu? Where is this God you claim is everywhere? Is he in this pillar? He struck a stone pillar in his great hall. Is he in this pillar right here? Show me. "Show me this god of yours." And Prahlada said, "Yes. He is there too." The pillar cracked, and from within it, with a sound like the universe itself splitting open, emerged something that no living being had ever seen before. Narasimha, half man, half lion, neither fully one nor fully the other. The texts describe this form with terrifying detail. The body of a man from the waist down, the upper body and head of a lion, blazing mane, burning eyes, claws like lightning, a roar that shook the foundations of all three worlds. This was Vishnu, taking a form that had never existed before and would never exist again. A form created specifically and only to resolve the paradox of Hiranyakashipu's boons. Not a man, not an animal, not a weapon, not in the day, for it was twilight, the junction between day and night. Not on the earth, not in the sky, for Narasimha carried Hiranyakashipu to the threshold of the hall, a doorway, neither inside nor outside. And with his bare claws, which were no weapon known by any name, he placed the demon king across his own lap, neither on the earth nor in the sky, and brought about his end. Every single one of the boons was honored. Every condition was met. The impossible death that Hiranyakashipu had constructed so carefully across all those years of tapas, all those carefully worded negotiations with Brahma, was fulfilled to the letter. Not circumvented. Not cheated. Fulfilled. This is one of the most remarkable qualities of Hindu mythology as a body of literature. The gods do not break the rules. They work within the rules so completely, so creatively, so absolutely, that the rules themselves become the instrument of justice. The boon was not voided. It was honored with a precision so exact it becomes poetry. After the end of Hiranyakashipu, the story tells us that Narasimha's rage did not immediately subside. The form was so fierce, so primal, so cosmically violent, that even the gods were afraid to approach. The celestials, the sages, even Brahma and Shiva kept their distance. Only Prahlada stepped forward. The child who had been thrown from mountains and fed to serpents and buried beneath boulders. The child whose faith had survived every assault his father could devise. He walked toward the blazing divine wrath of Narasimha, and he laid his head at those lion feet, and he began to sing. And the rage cooled. This moment, this specific image of a child's loving devotion calming the cosmic fury of the divine, has been painted, sculpted, danced, and sung about in India for thousands of years. It appears on temple walls across South Asia. It is celebrated every year in the festival of Holi, which is partly a commemoration of Prahlada's triumph, and in Narasimha Jayanti. It is one of the most enduring images in the entire Hindu artistic tradition. But I want to zoom out for a moment, because this story does something that the greatest myths always do. It operates simultaneously on multiple levels. On the surface, it is an adventure. A demon king, a divine child, a miraculous rescue, a cosmic battle. One level deeper, it is a story about the nature of faith. Prahlada is not just a character who believes in God. He is a demonstration of what faith actually means. It does not mean the absence of suffering. He was tortured repeatedly. It does not mean the immediate intervention of the divine. He endured every trial alone, in his own body, with his own spirit. It means the refusal to let suffering become the final word. It means keeping a relationship with the sacred alive through everything that tries to sever it. One level deeper still, it is a philosophical argument about the nature of divine presence. Where is Vishnu? In the pillar. In the tyrant himself. In the spaces between moments. In every atom of a universe that Vishnu both pervades and transcends. Hiranyakashipu's question, intended as mockery, is actually the deepest question in the tradition. And the tradition answers it not with a doctrine or a lecture, but with a lion bursting through stone at twilight. And at the deepest level of all, this is a story about the relationship between power and love. Hiranyakashipu had every form of power that the universe could confer. Conquest, invincibility, the subjugation of heaven itself. And he could not do what his young son could do, which was to remain fully, peacefully, joyfully present in the divine. Power could not produce what love already had. Now I want to draw your attention to some fascinating parallels, because SERA Mythology is about the whole world, and the themes in this story echo across cultures in ways that suggest something deep about the human experience. The motif of the impossible death, the boon crafted with loopholes that ultimately becomes the instrument of justice, appears in Norse mythology in the death of Balder, who was made invincible against everything in the world except mistletoe, which was the only thing that could kill him. In both stories, the invincibility is real, the loophole is real, and the universe finds its way through the crack. The motif of the tyrant who demands to be worshipped as God appears in Egyptian mythology, in Greek mythology with figures like Tantalus who overstep divine boundaries, in the Mesopotamian tradition, and notably in the biblical story of Pharaoh and the plagues of Egypt, where a ruler who had made himself a divine figure is brought low through a series of escalating supernatural interventions. The motif of the faithful child, the unlikely devotee, the smallest and most vulnerable person in the room being the one through whom the divine chooses to act, this is deeply embedded in almost every tradition on earth. David and Goliath. The child who sees the emperor has no clothes. The youngest sibling in countless folk traditions who succeeds where strength and cunning fail. And the motif of the divine taking an unexpected, in-between form to resolve a paradox. This is perhaps the most philosophically rich recurring theme in world mythology. The divine does not fit neatly into the categories that human beings create. When we try to build boxes that contain or exclude the sacred finds the space between the boxes. Always. In Japanese Shinto, the divine kami inhabit unexpected places and forms. In West African Yoruba tradition, the orishas manifest in syncretic, blended, hybrid forms that transcend simple categories. In the mystical traditions of Judaism, the divine cannot be fully named or contained by language. In Sufi Islam, the divine is present in everything and approaches the seeker in unexpected ways. The form of Narasimha, lion and man, twilight and threshold, lap and claw, is a perfect mythological symbol for the divine as something that by its very nature exceeds our categories. It is always precisely in the crack between our certainties that it appears. I want to close with something personal, or as personal as a reflection on a 4,000-year-old story can be. When I first encountered the story of Prahlada in any depth, what struck me was not the miracles. The flying through the air unharmed, the venom that dissolved, the pillar that exploded into divine form. These are spectacular, yes. But what stayed with me was the quietness of Prahlada himself. Here is a child who is being actively destroyed by the most powerful being in the cosmos, a being who also happens to be his father. And in the texts, Prahlada does not rage. He does not collapse. He does not argue theology with his father, though he is clearly capable of it. He simply keeps returning to the source of his peace. Again and again and again. Through every assault, he returns to the thing that makes him himself. There is something in that image that feels true beyond mythology, beyond religion, beyond any specific cultural tradition. We all face versions of Hiranyakashipu, forces, sometimes external, sometimes internal, that demand we abandon what is most essential to us. That tell us our devotion, our love, our deepest sense of what is real and true and sacred, is foolish, childish, dangerous. That real power lies elsewhere. Prahlada's answer is not a doctrine. It is a way of being. Say, return. When you are thrown from the mountain, return. When the snakes come, return. When your own father cannot see you, return. And eventually, sometimes from the most unexpected place, sometimes from the crack in the very pillar of the world, something vast and fierce and loving breaks through. That, to me, is the gift of this story. Not the triumph of good over evil in some simple moral equation, but the image of what faithfulness, real faithfulness, looks like in practice. It looks like a small boy, badly frightened, returning again and again to the only thing that has ever felt completely true. This has been the first episode of SERA Mythology. We began in ancient India, at the feet of a lion-headed god standing in the ruins of a tyrant's palace, with a child singing to calm the fury of the cosmos. Next time we travel. I will not tell you where yet. But I will tell you this. Every culture on Earth has looked up at the same night sky and asked the same enormous questions. Who made this? What does it want from us? What are we supposed to do here, in this brief and bewildering life? The answers they gave are what we are here to explore. I will see you at the next fire.